This is Now Breakfast.
This is Today in the News on Now Breakfast.
Today in the news, the Minister of Finance says that Nigeria has recorded a solid revenue performance this year, and as such, the federal government intends to return to the Senate for appropriation of extra revenue in 2024. Wale Edun, the Minister of Finance, says the revenue in the third quarter of the year went up by 5 points, a trend that he expects to continue. The 2023 projected revenue stood at 16.8 trillion naira. For next year, the federal government expects to make 18.32 trillion naira. For more on this conversation, we're joined by an economist, Mukhtar Mohammed. Mr. Mohammed, good morning.
Good morning.
What is your reaction to this move by the federal government?
Well, it's a good news. If we've been complaining about revenue, and they have a revenue target of about 18.7 trillion, and now they're saying that revenue might go up, and that means that they've said that when that revenue goes up, they are going to tie it to specific project. They are going to bring it back to the National Assembly. I think that will reduce our budget deficit. For me, if that happens, it's good news, because the challenge with our budget has been a lot of budget deficit and our inability also to be able to make more revenue, because our debt to revenue is very, 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 very low. So it's good thing if it happens, but like he said, it's a projection by and by the third quarter. And remember that why he's saying that now is because of the increase that we've seen in the crude oil production, and so that could attribute to the current increase in seen in the third quarter revenue. I'll be more excited if this increase is tied to maybe taxes, or we've been able to bridge the gap between tax to GDP. Then I'll be more excited about it.
You know, Mr. Mohammed, it's interesting you touch on the range of things that you do, because one, the minister says that we're expecting to see this trend continue. However, the latest news says that our oil production dropped month on month from 1.4 million plus barrels, from 1.5 million plus barrels to 1.4 million plus barrels. So we're already seeing that reduction. This was between October to November. When you also consider that this is simply a 5% increase, is that enough for us to decide that we want to review the entire revenue for the next year?
5% is a lot when you look at from where we are coming from. I mean, 5% is a lot. So 5% could go into building more infrastructures, maybe keen into social investment, especially that will involve the reduction of poverty. So 5% for me is a lot. But again, we've seen those numbers come down in oil production. Remember that the target is 1.76 million barrels per day, and now we are doing 1.4. They've not told us what are the reason behind these recent figures, why it has come down. But again, you need to still be excited about it. To remember that some months ago we were just doing 900,000 barrels, so we increased it by 600,000 barrels, and now we are back to 1.4. So I think like I always say, budget is a projection, and again, and if by virtue of the revenues, the production is going down, and we are seeing an increment in revenue, that's also good news. That means that we are no more so much depending on oil. So that's why we need to have more breakdown from the minister to know where these extra revenue are coming from. Is it coming from the real sector, or is it by and by the oil production? But if it is through the oil production, then we more have cause for concern. But if it is through other sector, then we might be excited that there could be an improvement going forward.
Right. Mr. Mohammed, not to take away from the good news, but we do have a budget deficit of more than 9 trillion naira for 2024. Would it be wiser to be conservative? Well,
conservative we have. If you look at 2023, the budget deficit was 11 trillion. So we've been able to remove 3 trillion. That's huge. That's very huge. And so if we are able to reduce the budget deficit again, it's good for us. So I don't think it's a problem. But like I said, budget deficit on itself is not so much of a big problem if those deficits are into capital expenditure. it only become a problem when most of those deficits as a result of allowances, salaries, and then you begin to have concerns. So if we are seeing a deficit drop about 3 trillion, I think it's huge for us from 11 trillion. So when we see those deficit drops and we see those and they are going into capital expenditure, then it's also good news for us. But we need to have more details, or like I said, on where this 5% is coming from. But I think it's a good news that our budget deficit have come from a height of 11 trillion to a low of about 9 trillion, and I think we keep improving on that.
So, Mr. Mohammed, just before we let you go, earlier you talked about, wanting to have seen this coming from, say, more the tax revenue, whatever the case may be in that way. Yet, I think it was just yesterday or 2 days ago that the Minister of Finance said they're looking more towards just general revenue generation from some of the government's agencies than in the direction of increasing taxation. So when you consider this, do you think that we've got what it takes to actually pull more revenue and block whatever the leakages may be?
I think the good news is that the president has a special advisor on revenue. And so that is, we've never had any president that has a special advisor on revenue. So revenue mobilization, and so that is good. I mean, there's a specific person assigned to that. And you, like the minister said, they are trying to centralize all government revenue to guide against leakages, which is also good, and make sure they are digitalized, which makes it that we were able to know where we earn our revenue for and how we earn our revenue and what is exactly those revenues. So for me, it's a good thing that is happening. But like you said, the minister also did say that they will not tax more Nigerians, which for me is good news, but they will try to improve upon the taxes, that is widening the tax net. And whenever any government talks about widening the tax net, for me, I always think, how do you get the informal sector to begin to pay taxes? That, for me, is going to be a game changer, because 80% of Nigerians that are earning a living are in the informal sector. How do you get them? Because presently now, the formal sector is the key driver of the tax policy. We've not been able to attract the informal sector. And when we talk about the informal sector, we're talking about the market women, we're talking about all the people that what we call their earn daily income. For you to get them into the tax net, you must do something to make them excited to be able to pay taxes. And then you have to also deal with multi-taxation, which comes from local government and state government. So all these are why they have the special advisor on revenue, and also has a special advisor on taxes. So it's a good thing that we are looking at that, and I think that's why the government is optimistic. And if within 6 months they are seeing an improvement in that regard, that calls for joy that a lot of things are going to work out fine for me. So for me, I think it's a good thing. And again, remember some of the revenue that we're expecting is for sale of some of our assets, which are moribund. So it's also a good thing.
Well, thank you very much for speaking to us this morning, Mr. Mohammed. Our guest on the conversation, Mr. Mukhtar Mohammed, is an economist talking to us about the federal government's plan to approach the Senate for appropriation of extra revenue in 2024.
This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.
ECOWAS has set up a committee to negotiate with the military junta in Niger Republic, and it has promised to gradually ease sanctions on the country dependent on the outcomes of the negotiations. The committee will discuss the need for a short transition roadmap to democracy and the establishment of monitoring mechanisms. Members of this committee include the President of Togo, Faure Gnassingbé, the President of Sierra Leone, Julius Maada Bio, and the President of Benin Republic, Patrice Talon. This morning, Dr. Kester Ono, a senior research fellow at the National Institute of International Affairs and a visiting lecturer at the Institute of Peace, Security and Conflict Resolution, Nnamdi Azikiwe University, Awka, joins us on this conversation. Good morning and welcome, sir.
Good morning, and thank you for having me on the program.
It's a pleasure to speak with you. Let's start off with reactions to this committee that's been put together by ECOWAS, taking a look at, first of all, the makeup of the committee and the fact that they've decided that this is the direction that they want to tow at this point.
Well, I think it's a welcome development, considering the fact that diplomacy will always prevail at the end of the day. And like I always emphasize, and it's equally an indication that the Nigerian government are willing to dialogue at this time, even though the conditions given by ECOWAS for them to dialogue has not been met. At least we consider the fact that they refused to release the former president, Bazoum, to a third country that will facilitate actually the discussion. And again, equally the 3 years that they have given for for them to hand over to democratically elected government. I believe that ECOWAS that insisting that 3 years is too much, that a transition shouldn't take anything less than 1 year. But the good thing there is that they are talking. And for the fact that even the junta in Niger has visited the Togo, and equally asked the Togo president, that is Eyedema, to act on their behalf to negotiate. It's a welcome development that we are getting to somewhere.
Sir, what sort of progress could possibly be expected considering some of these differences that you've just highlighted?
Well, if you look at the humanitarian crisis in Niger, and you look at equally the security challenges that we are facing in West Africa, because if you look at the expansion on Niger, has equally stopped them from contributing their own quota, to the borders to checkmate these Islamic fundamentalists. And for the fact that they are no longer participating, it has created a serious crisis that is impacting negatively on other West African countries. So I think the sooner they go to the negotiation table and they bring them back and maybe lessen the sanction, the better for even other countries. Otherwise, you'll be having security challenges this period around. So I believe that the sanction will be softened. I equally believe that due to the humanitarian crisis, that ECOWAS will lessen maybe some of the sanctions to facilitate further talks.
I mean, ECOWAS has said that it is dependent on what comes out of the negotiations. I'd like to turn your attention to the Alliance of Sahel States, which was the military pact that was signed by Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. And if you remember, this came up around the time that ECOWAS was discussing putting together a standing force that would go into Niger and restore democracy. With this alliance still very active, with the alliance having 2 other member states that are not in this current conversation, what are the likelihoods that we will see an agreement? Again, this is just another added factor on whether we will actually see agreements occur.
Okay, if you are talking about the alliance,
yes,
we should equally understand that part of the conditions the junta government in Niger gave to France is for them, to move their military installations out of Niger, and that created a lacuna in their security architecture, considering the fact that there were breakout of insecurity crisis here and there, and there were flashes of attacks. So, and I think that was what actually motivated the alliance, considering equally the threat that was coming from ECOWAS and from other external bodies, So they were forced into that alliance with Burkina Faso, Guinea, and the other countries that are being governed by military junta now. So I believe that as the talk progress, one, we are talking about ECOWAS. ECOWAS is a big sub-regional alliance. So as the talk progresses, maybe that alliance may come to an end if they can be reassured that nobody will attack them this time around. That alliance may, it may be gradually winding up, just as the talk progresses. Thank you.
Right. So if I may, what could the democracy roadmap entail, especially considering our failure in Mali despite regular engagements with ECOWAS?
Well, Mali issue is not the same with that of Niger. If you consider the affinity, that's Niger affinity with Nigeria, and we equally realize that the current president of ECOWAS is the Nigerian president, that is Alhaji Ahmed Bola Tinubu. So if you consider the current engagement, you realize that we cannot equate it with that of Mali, considering the fact that these are 2 different countries. You understand? With different orientations. So I believe that with the affinity with Nigerians, with Nigerian government and equally the close relationship, I believe that something different will come out of that of this year.
Well, apparently time will tell on this, and we hope to reconnect with you once developments occur. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise in this conversation. Dr. Kester Ono is a senior research fellow at the National Institute of International Affairs and a visiting lecturer of Peace, Security and Conflict Resolution at the Nnamdi Azikiwe University in Awka. Joining us this morning to discuss the ECOWAS committee that's been set up to re-engage with the military junta in Niger.
You're listening to Now Breakfast.
President Bola Ahmed Tinubu says Nigeria needs partnerships for a new green economy in Africa. In an opinion piece published on CNN, President Tinubu called for developed nations to address climate change with a fair and cooperative approach. And while referencing the climate positive growth paradigm adopted at the Africa Climate Summit 3 months ago, he stressed that Nigeria and Africa do not need to decommission coal-fired power plants. He ends his piece by stating that, and I quote, choosing equity and justice in the global economy offers a chance to right past wrongs, save the planet, and create a better future for all. To discuss this morning, we are joined by Kehinde Ogunyale, a climate and data journalist. Mr. Ogunyale, thank you for joining us. What is your reaction to the piece that was published by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me once again. I think that I really saw some strong words here. And I like the fact that it's coming from the president. Like he said, that he's president of more than 200 million people and also the head of the ECOWAS. And so I think he's one of the person in the best position to write that. And understanding that African depends, Africa is a developing country, like I've said this before, and they contribute very less to the climate change issues that affect them. We need to see what developed countries are doing to help these countries mitigate or adapt to climate change. And this is talking about financing, this is talking about their plans to just transition and renewable energy and so on, like support. So I saw Tinubu reading out some of the plans by Nigeria, and I saw him talking about transportation and how his administration is working towards changing the transportation system and moving down to even electrifying it. Now, the problem I've always had with COP conferences and presidents speaking is the fact that it's not just about talking, it's about implementation. So what are the plans to implement these things so that we don't just things go over time, and these conversations are just there. So I think that the speech is right, but I feel like the implementation plan is what everybody is after right now.
Before we go a little further into implementation, it's interesting that the president simultaneously says, look, we can't do away with fossil fuels for the continent right now, but also says we are committed to net zero emissions. As you know, COP28 has extended into an extra day because the delegates who are present have not agreed on the deal. They are asking for stronger commitments around phasing out fossil fuels. So considering this disparity, is it a disparity, these opposites that the president has raised? How exactly does that place Nigeria in the global conversation?
Yeah. So there was this GST that was released, this GST table that was released, and we saw countries even arguing, several African countries arguing that we can't completely phase out fossil fuels. This is because, let's use Nigeria for an example. Most of our revenues, even though oil contribute very less to our GDP, right? Most of our revenue are taken from oil. You saw the budget that was presented, right? So we are almost expected that we generate almost everything from oil. And several of these African countries who strongly depend on fossil fuels. So there has been this argument, and there was the argument even till yesterday that you can't completely phase out. What they can do is phase down, right? And to them, there are strong points that phasing out means that they are not taking any source of revenue. They are not going to be generating any source of revenue from this place, right? And there's almost no alternative plan, right, to generating, to complementing for that phase out, right? So most of them, they're okay, fine. If we phase down this, meaning that we're just reducing the dependency on fossil fuel and we're trying to create alternative measures. But then you put out to the practical aspect of it. How developed are these African countries to start? Let's say, for instance, renewable energy. What are the solar plants that are available? How developed are African countries right now to start erecting solar plants around their nation? What stage Nigeria will be supposedly the leading country in Africa? What are our plans right now, or what are our capacity right now to start developing solar plants that can power and give electricity to 200 million people without no thinking? So at the end of the day, you will see that they have a point deciding that we don't want to phase out completely. So yeah, and you will not blame them. You will not blame them because contributing less to climate change and asking them to stop using what most of them depend on revenue is almost to quote almost insensible to them, right? So yeah, I think I must agree with that. Although we know that fossil fuel is almost contributing very high to climate change. So I feel if we can access finance properly and adequately, right, we can see at least a complete reduction. Let's say from 100% to about 10% or 20%, where the other things just transition into a renewable energy or an alternative form of energy.
Right. Former President Muhammadu Buhari actually committed Nigeria to a 2060 target for achieving net zero emissions. How do you perceive this pledge in the context of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's peace?
Shaky because after Buhari's pledge, right, we had the energy transition. The energy transition plan that was laid out, right? But since then, we have really had not strong drive towards it, right? There was the first phase was we had the whole green in the society where people are planting trees. I saw the president coming out to say again that they promised last year they were going to plant trees and they are successfully planting trees. And I was like, where did you plant the trees? I mean, what's the template? Where can we find it? Right? So we have this much stuff. But the problem I've had over time with countries, especially with Nigeria, right, is the fact that we don't get to talk. So I read a couple of pieces where I saw the Labour Union talking, I saw the police talking, the Minister of Environment talking, the director in charge of the energy transition plan talking, and as well as the president talking. And I was like, okay, give us the data. I'm sorry, this is because I'm a data person. Give us the data that this is where you were last year, and this is where you are last year. Now, not us come to tell us that you are committed to. You know already that you have financial progress, right? You know already that you have an oil problem, right? Because if you want to transition, then you have to probably go down to the south where you have oil bunkering. This is not talking about oil major producing companies that are even extracting oil from Iran. What of oil bunkering? That is happening down in the south. How do you control that? So you have a lot of people talking and telling them that we are committed to doing this, we're committed to doing that. I saw the president sign a treaty with, I think, the Germany on electricity, right? And right. So it was a lot of talking, a lot of commitment. But I'm a data person. I need data to work with this thing. So give us the on their development. Don't just tell us that these people are doing this and we are committed to doing this. So I think over the next month right now, successfully we have not ended conversation around fossil fuel, and that has filled over. I like the fact that we are able to include gender into the conversation and who have to continue find their place to it. So I'm looking for implementation over the next week too.
Well, we're all waiting for implementation. Thank you so much for speaking to us, Mr. Ogunyale, on this conversation. Our guest this morning is Kehinde Ogunyale, a climate and data journalist, talking about President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's piece that was published on CNN calling for developed nations to address climate change with a fair and cooperative approach. That's all for the conversation this morning, but there are other conversations that will continue.
Good morning and welcome back. You're tuned to Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos. This is the interview on Now Breakfast. And this morning, Abuja has been uncovered as the center of illegal kidney trade in the country. A Daily Trust report. This is Daily Trust. They carried out a covert 3-month-long investigation into the dirty trade involving hospitals in Abuja and brokers who lured young Nigerians into donating their kidneys for as low as 1 million naira. Here is one of the victims that was interviewed by Daily Trust as originally aired on Trust TV.
Window for Ben Abed Naja. So Abib come and tell me say that okay, let's talk. Abib we go out and talk. He told me that there is one business for town inside Abuja. They do kidney harvesting. So I want to tell and say they will carry my kidney, go outside country, I be how. Say no, and me and the person will get kidney problem. We do tests. If we get okay, then they will give me 1.1. I told him that his money is too small. Out of 2 million, he say no. Say they will give me 1.1. We talk. He told me say okay, they will give me 1.2.
Abbas is one of at least 6 young men from Mararaba that have followed this dangerous path.
The voice you just heard is the voice of Lami Sadiq, who led the investigation, the Daily Trust investigation into the matter. It also goes on to reveal how a lack of government policy and guidelines for hospitals involved in organ transplant is fueling this crisis. This morning, Ms. Lami Sadiq, the investigation's head at Daily Trust newspaper, joins us in the conversation. Good morning and welcome, Ms. Sadiq. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Good morning. I'm really happy to be here.
So let's start off with, before we get into the investigation proper, just what exactly led you to embark on this journey?
Okay, thank you so much for your question. Actually, this is a journey that started sometime around July. We have already published the first story sometime in August. It started around July when we got a tip that a young boy, a minor's kidney had been harvested and his father was willing to talk. And so we got this report through a group of lawyers. And so, of course, after discussing with them, they agreed to visit us in our office. We spoke with them. And then, so, of course, we started this investigation. It started with just one person, a minor, and we dug deep and we were able to publish the first story sometime in August. But after that story, we started to get more calls, and people were telling us that this actually goes beyond what we have reported. There are other victims, that it's actually a chain, that there's a chain of agents and kidney brokers, actually. And Mararaba, Masaka, the outskirts of Abuja, these satellite communities are almost like the market where people go there to get victims. And so, of course, we started to dig. And luckily for us, people were willing to talk to us. And then after that, we decided, okay, we've gotten a lot of testimonies from these young men, because all of them were below the age of 25. We've gotten a lot of testimonies from them. We've done a lot of research. We decided, okay, the best thing is to go undercover and see what these people telling us is actually true. Is this actually what we will find when we go undercover? And incidentally, it was what we found. The only difference was that because of the time span, some of the donors, I say donors in quote, because it's illegal to buy kidneys, were saying that, oh, well, things have changed. The cost of living is quite high now. So, of course, the price of kidney has now gone up. It should now be 1.5 million. So that was what led to it.
Lami, could you give us a further sense of your findings during the course of the undercover period of the investigation?
I think what we're seeing is that mostly what we found is that the target is people from low economic background, people who live in poverty, people who feel 1 million naira is big enough to change their lives, people who think that it is within their rights to sell their body, people who do not even know that it is illegal to sell their kidneys, people who do not even know the long-term implication of selling their kidney. So these are some of the findings. We found that socioeconomic situation in the country is actually fueling this trade. What we found is that also there is a likelihood that, because one of the victims told us that he sold his own kidney to a foreigner. So I think the question I think we need to start to ask is, we should dig to find out why are foreigners coming to Nigeria for kidney transplantation, especially people coming from North America, people coming from India. I'm saying this because we know that healthcare system is more advanced in those countries. Why are they coming to Nigeria for kidney transplantation? We need to ask these questions. It's possible they are coming here because they know that it's easy to access kidney with poverty, and they can easily use brokers to get young boys from Nigeria to give them a kidney at very, very low prices.
So I do wonder if you found out how much in a legal in a legal setting, right? How much would typically be involved in a kidney transplant? You already mentioned that. I think all countries across the world, except is it Iran, where it is illegal to trade in organs, but there is still a price for the surgery itself and other things that would typically go into it. What is that disparity? Could you speak to us on that?
What we found is that for Nigeria, so that's government hospitals that offer transplantation, what we found is sometime in August is that to offer a transplantation that's medically, as it is safely and legally, I think you pay between 5 million naira for the procedure. But in private hospitals, people who have had kidney transplantation pay as much as 10 million to 15 million. That's for the procedure. But legally, organ donation should be altruistic. You should do it for humanity. You shouldn't sell your kidney. It should be altruistic. So, but in Nigeria, of course, we don't have a list. We don't really have a regulatory agency that has drawn up a list of people who need organ transplantation and what is the process. Another thing is that in Nigeria, we do not have cadaveric organ transplantation, meaning that people deceased organ transplantation, maybe donating a kidney after someone is dead. We don't really have the due to possibly because of our cultural and religious background. But if you check in advanced countries, the high number of organ transplantation comes from deceased transplantation. So of course, we have desperation fueling this because people who need kidney are desperate because they want to prolong their life. And sometimes people don't want to use relatives because of the risk. So they prefer to just buy a kidney in the black market.
Ms. Sadiq, you yourself went undercover. What struck you the most about this experience?
I think what struck me the most is the fact that even the agents are young boys. That kind of scared me because, and you find that except for the agent we spoke with while undercover, most of the agents, from the testimonies we gathered, most of the agents have equally sold their kidneys because it's easy for someone who has sold his kidney to convince another person to do that. So when the agents meet these young boys, they tell them, well, I've sold my kidney and I'm fine. I have a scar to prove it. And then they show them the scar and they tell them, well, I'm fine, right? And then so it's easy to convince another person, seeing that scar, seeing that you are fine, easy to convince the person to also do that. So what kind of struck me is the fact that these are young boys playing a dangerous game and they do not understand the implication. They do not understand the long-term repercussion of what they have done. But then again, these are young boys telling me now, months after their surgery, that they go through a lot. There's a lot of pain. They no longer have the physical strength they used to have before the surgery. So we're seeing a lot of regrets. And if we're not careful, like one of the experts said, one of the the outcome of this is that over time they may get depressed. And we saw that in one of the victims we spoke with. He almost became suicidal. He attempted suicide because he felt he had lost a lot. He had given out a kidney. He no longer has the strength to do certain jobs. He is not unemployed. And then again, to crown it all, the 1 million naira he was given, half of that money took from him.
I mean, you paint a very grim picture, and we know that typically when an organ transplant takes place, there's the long-term care that happens after. This also speaks to the responsibility of the hospitals themselves who are involved in this. And in your report, you repeatedly name one hospital that seems to come back to the center of this illegal trade. Is it just one hospital that's in the mix, or are there a number of hospitals in Abuja that you have found to be culpable?
Actually, in the course of our investigation, we found young guys who said it is not just this one hospital, but of course we're working with the evidence we had. There are other private hospitals. That is why we're calling on government to beam a searchlight on not just government hospitals, but also private hospitals. Because you find that when it comes to kidney transplantation, private hospitals are championing this cause. It's a good thing. Yes, we want to see this kind of advancement in medical care in Nigeria. We know that the private hospitals are pumping a lot of money, so they have equipment, they have the resources to pay qualified staff. It's a good thing. But all we're asking is that government beams a searchlight, because again, if care is not taken, private hospitals may be driven by profit to make money. And so perhaps if we are not careful, ethical and legal lines will be crossed. So, of course, there are other private hospitals who are doing this. And they are private hospitals. Why we need to ask questions why private hospitals have very high number of kidney transplantation. Where are they sourcing these kidneys? Although private hospitals will tell you that we do not source kidneys, we don't know anything about that. The recipients or the patients usually come with their donors. But I think that there should be due diligence. Ethically, doctors need to do due diligence before you take someone under the knife. And that was what we saw with the Ekweremadu, the former Deputy Senate President that was sentenced this year. Because what happened was that, of course, the doctors started to interview this donor. And then they found out that you do not have the resources to continue the lifelong care that should be required from someone who has donated his kidney. How will you continue with that? So I think these are questions we need to ask. When someone comes and says he wants to donate his kidney, even if it's altruistic, you need to look at it. What does he have the capacity, the financial capacity to continue with a certain lifestyle after he has donated his kidney? He needs to change his way of life. Of course, he needs to change his diet. He needs to, you need to look at the kind of job you will do. You have to look at all this. All these are encompassing. So I think we need to start to ask these questions. Another thing is we need to create a lot of awareness. People need to know that there is a long-term repercussion. One of the experts we spoke to, we said something very vital. He said there's a likelihood that those who have donated their kidneys may also have CKD, that's chronic kidney disease, in future. And then what happens, especially if you're from a poor economic background, what happens to you? You may not have money for dialysis. You may not have 15 million naira for the procedure. And then where do you get a kidney?
Good question. Ms. Sadiq, one of the agents that you discovered is based in Lagos. Did your investigation show that other parts of the country may be involved in this?
I think what we only showed was that this is something that is becoming very common and topical, and it has become a source of concern. We looked at the fact that in the last few months, we know that there was a similar case in Plateau State, in Jos in particular of Plateau State, whereby the case, a suspect is being prosecuted. The case is in court now. So that was the only thing we were able to look at. We didn't really look at other states because it's possible that these things may be happening in other states, or there may be such clandestine operations happening in other states. But our focus for this investigation was around this axis, because this was where we found evidence we needed. This was where we found the testimonies. This was where we found that, and again, you know, the federal capital is where you have very big hospitals, highly reputable hospitals, where you have the high and mighty. So I think also perhaps people need to look into what is happening around Lagos, because we have these top medical centers in big cities, right? So of course, kidney transplantation will take place in usually big cities. So I think I want to put this as a challenge to my colleagues in Lagos. I think we need to look around that area to perhaps there may be something happening.
It's worth mentioning here that you did note that NAPTIP picked up one of the persons that you identified in your report. And the other bit is how we saw the Minister of Health and Coordinating Minister of Social Welfare respond to your report on social media. There were a few things he noted, because at the tail end you talk about, and you've said as much in this conversation, you talk about lapse regulations and policies, but the minister insists that there are policies to guide some of these things. And he also points to the role of state governments who have the power over monitoring of the hospitals. I wonder how you perceive that, his response to your reporting. Do you think it was adequate?
Well, personally, I don't think it was adequate. I agree that we have laws. We have the National Health Act 2014, which we quoted and which criminalizes the organ harvest of anybody under the age of 18. I think a lot of experts have come out to say even the National Health Act is inadequate in terms of this. And also, I felt that more needed to be done, because we found that there is a National Institution Standard Committee, which the minister also mentioned, which is supposed to kind of create standards for hospitals in terms of organ transplantation. And then we found out that since the National Act was signed into law, there was this committee was inaugurated, and then of course the first committee expired, and another one was inaugurated sometime in 2021. But we found out that between 2021 and sometime around November this year, the committee was not active. So, but then with the coming of this present administration, they inaugurated the committee sometime in November. And the committee is headed by a renowned medical doctor, Professor Abiodun Phillips, who we also spoke with, and he told us that, of course, they will look into this. They will do everything possible to ensure that something is done. So I think we're keeping our fingers crossed. We want to see what this committee will do, because we had initially written a freedom of information request to the Ministry of Health, asking them that since there's a committee that is supposed to set standards for hospitals, and we wanted to know what were the standards they were setting for this hospital. We wanted to know how many hospitals in Nigeria had met the criteria for these standards, and we wanted to know the locations of these hospitals. These questions were deliberate, but we never got any response from the ministry. I'm talking about an FOI we wrote sometime in September. We never got a response until we went to press in December.
What responses have you received from the NMA, the MDCN, and the other health associations in Nigeria?
We are yet to receive any response from these associations, but we have received a lot of response from individual medical doctors who were very happy that this thing is in the front burner. Doctors are saying that this is something that needs to be addressed. We're also happy with what NAPTIP is doing, because from the first time we published the first investigation, sometime in August, they reached out to us and they said they were interested, they were worried about this, and they asked if we could help them with some of our contacts, some of our leads, and we did that. And of course, like we indicated in the story, NAPTIP confirmed to us that they've made a lot of arrests, including the broker. And we are happy that they're building a case on this. So I just want to say that as journalists, we have a responsibility. And I think to some extent we have tried to do that. So it is left for now government agencies, regulatory bodies to now take it up from here, to do something about it. Because the fear is that we may not necessarily have a vibrant youth population in future if we allow this to continue. Our youths who are below the age of 25, if they feel the need to sell their kidneys, I think what we're saying is that the number of kidney disease in Nigeria might spike in future, because already experts say we have over 20 million people. So it might spike because anyone who sells one kidney has a higher chance of getting kidney if he doesn't take care of that kidney, because you need to take care of the kidney. So someone from a poor background may not necessarily have the finances to take care of that kidney. He may not eat healthy. So that's just what we're saying. And we hope that the necessary government agencies, establishment, take it up from there and do the right thing.
Ms. Sadiq, a big thank you to you for your time and sharing with us the details of your investigation. We truly appreciate it.
So much.
Lami Sadiq is the reporter behind this Daily Trust investigation that uncovered an illegal kidney trade in Abuja. It's worth mentioning here that Ms. Sadiq was the winner of the Wole Soyinka Center for Investigative Journalism Prize under the category for investigative reporting for print. This particular report won her that award. And we will certainly be bringing you updates out of this, especially by way of government reaction. As you heard from earlier, the Minister of Health has reacted, NAPTIP responded, and hopefully we'll get more reactions as we go.
That's where the interview happens for this week, but the conversation continues on Now Breakfast.
This is 95.3 Business Now.
It's Wednesday, December the 13th. Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to the show. I am Marami Day Show. Let's get started. The Bureau of Public Enterprises has announced plans to sell off in 2024 the remainder 40% shares of the federal government equity in all the electricity distribution companies and 4 other assets. The Director General of the Bureau of Public Enterprises, Alex Oko, said in a media chat on Tuesday that other assets that will be sold off next year via initial public offerings at the capital market include the Elime Petrochemicals Company Limited, Nigeria Reinsurance, Nikon Insurance, and the Nigeria Machine Tools located in Oshogbo, the Osun State capital. Oko, however, acknowledged some of the existing challenges around the ownership of the discos, which the government plans to resolve soon. Africa's leading fintech platform Flutterwave has announced the acquisition of payment licenses to operate across 13 states in the United States of America. The fintech firm is also planning to become a publicly listed company on the New York Stock Exchange, having processed over 550 million transactions totaling more than $32 billion and served over 2 million businesses with extensive infrastructure across 34 African countries. The Nigerian government says it may return to the National Assembly to seek approval for an increase in the size of the 27.5 trillion naira budget proposal for 2024 if revenue performance continues to improve. The Minister of Finance, Wale Edu, noted the significant improvement in the country's revenue profile in recent months. He added that the government would have no other option but to seek further approval for additional revenue spending in the new year. The Corporate Affairs Commission is set to delist 91,843 companies from its register for their failure to file the required annual returns. The 91,843 names of companies published on the CAC website for delisting is 2,738 less than the 94,581 names initially published in August, and also less than the initial 100,000 companies that CAC said it will remove in an earlier announcement. Well, coming up after the break, UK's Development Finance Agency has announced a fresh $15 million investment into Nigeria's agriculture sector. Join us again, everyone.
This is 95.3 Business Now.
Welcome back to Business Now. British International Investment, the UK's development finance institution, on Monday announced plans to invest $15 million in equity into a Singapore-based agricultural commodities trading house, also known as Valenci International, looking to fund the company's expansion of processing and warehouse infrastructure in Nigeria. Let's bring in Akin Alabi, an agricultural expert, farmer, and author, to discuss this. Alabi is also the co-founder and managing partner at Corporate Farmers Nigeria. Great having you connected into the show this morning, sir. All right, while we get to connect to our guest this morning. We'll quickly get you a brief of Monday's trading day. We're starting with equities. Bullish sentiments continued in the domestic equities market on Tuesday as investors' interest in UBA that went up 2.65%. We've got Oando 0.96%. Jitco recorded 0.64%. MTN Nigeria printed 2.08%. Access Core 0.99% in the upside, and FCMB 0.74%. All of these triggered a 0.33% increase in the benchmark index. Looking across frontier African market, the Egyptian main index slumped by 0.46%. The Kenya Burst declined 0.09%. That's on Tuesday. Here in West Africa, the regional exchange in Abidjan closed positive 0.31%, while the Ghana stock market remained flat. And in Southern Africa, the Zimbabwe stock exchange eked out 0.06 points, while the JSE in South Africa fell sharply by 1.72%. So we're back on Broad Street now. Overnight lending rate among commercial banks in Nigeria decelerated or declined by 74 basis points, finishing at 16.2% ahead of today's central bank weekly primary market auction for treasuries. We'll look at the fixed income space. The Treasury bill secondary market traded positively as average yield narrowed by 15 basis points to 10.9%. Elsewhere, the average yield paired by 1 basis point to 14.6% at the OMO segment. Let's get to bonds market. Now, trading in the FGM bond secondary market was bullish. The average yield softened by 15 basis points, closing yesterday at 14.8%. And let's look at foreign exchange. The Naira, that's our local currency here in Nigeria, depreciated by 0.1% to 865 Naira 03 kobo against the US dollar at the Nigerian autonomous foreign exchange market. And U.S. crude on Tuesday dropped. U.S. crude oil on Tuesday dropped nearly 4% as inflation data stoked anxiety among traders that the Federal Reserve may not be ready to ease up on interest rate. The West Texas Intermediate contract for January lost $2.71 or 3.80% to settle at $68.61 a barrel. The Brent contract for February shed $2.79 or 3.67% to settle at $73.24 a barrel. And while US shrugged off the latest inflation data, the oil market saw cause for concern. The consumer price index edged up 0.1% in November after being unchanged in October, while prices increased 3.1% from a year ago, according to the U.S. Department of Labor. Then oil prices are falling as record production in U.S., Canada, and Brazil collide with a weakening economy in China, raising concerns among traders that the market is oversupplied. And oil demand next year is also expected to be about 1 million barrels per day less than supply growth. That's according to Daniel Yergin, Vice Chairman of S&P Global. So quickly, let's get back to our conversation with Akin Alabi, an agriculture expert, farmer, and author, to discuss this latest UK Development Finance Agency announcing a fresh $15 million investment into Nigeria's agriculture sector. Good morning. It's good to have you connect in this morning, sir.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to also join you for this conversation and compliment of the season.
All right. What do you make on this latest $15 million UK agriculture investment into Nigeria?
All right. So I'm going to drive it from two things. Well, number one, the post events of COP28 and also preparation for 2024 farming season, as in the next farming season. So, well, number one, funding the agri sector has always been a major conversation across stakeholders, both private sector, both government sector. And funding takes a paramount role in ensuring that smaller farmers continue to produce more and produce efficiently. And you know that 2023 has been a very rough year for the sector. as a result of so many things in Nigeria, especially let me go start from COVID. COVID caused a lot of disruption in the entire sector. Okay, we moved down to election. There was more or less like a stop in the economy. Although we ate, but there was more or less like a non-functional economy at that point in time. Then going back to designing new policies by the administration of our president. So there are so many stopgaps in the middle, and among all this, funding is very essential. So this new funding by the UK government into the sector is definitely what we need now for two purposes. Number one, increase liquidity, across all small farmers, across all the states. Then two, preparing ourselves and also investing more into the agricultural sector, from production to market to distribution to logistics, and also, most importantly, mechanization and technology that serves as an enabler and also to drive the entire sector holistically. So the funding is going at the very right time.
But why was the funding focused on smallholder farmers, and how does it contribute to local food security?
Okay, averagely, our food is actually produced 70% from smallholder farmers across the country. Yeah, if you go to the northern region today, averagely every home is a smallholder farmer, and in whatever production and output they produce goes into the commodity market. So 70% of the food production today in Nigeria is produced averagely by smallholder farmers. So that means any funding, local and international, is coming into the sector or into the country needs to first of all target of the small farmers, and it's in category from number one from the seed. Coming together for us to have a bountiful harvest after the entire farming season. So smallholder farmers are the major focus of food production, mainly in Nigeria and also in Africa.
Okay, but then what more needs to be done for Nigeria to develop its agro-food processing and manufacturing?
What needs to be done? Number one, this will be the level of that is the first brainer. Okay, government needs to work real hard with agencies to tackle insecurity within the farming communities. If this can be done, then other things would come fifthly into it. Then also we need to look at how we could begin to educate our farmers more to use simple farm tools that would take off the O1 cutlass era, which we are known for. Okay, so with simple farm tools, you can even be productive, be efficient, and also you can do much more. Number two. Then number three, in the aspect of education, our farmers also need to be educated. For example, most of the climate effects we have today in the country, the primary effect is because we don't have education or the causes. Let me give you an instance. A farmer that farms in a particular region, or a farm community, and you know that in this particular place, every year, if rain falls, definitely it will wash off my crops. So why do I have to farm there again the next time? Or why can't I build a system that will take up the water? So education is a major thing that we need to begin to put or as an add-on our farming community so that they can begin to farm with 21st century farm practice. Then we'll also begin to look at mechanization and also begin to look at insurance, begin to look at all the things as an add-on to the agri ecosystem that will make productivity and provide food security for a nation at large.
All right. How negatively impacted are Nigerian farmers in 2023, looking at this current harsh inflation, high exchange rates, and poor general economic conditions of the country?
Okay, so inflation has caused a lot of damage. In fact, I did a test analysis yesterday on fear of my system, and I asked the question, how many farms were able to sustain 2023? And I got no idea. A lot of farms are actually shutting down. And if we have averagely about 20-30% of farms shut down in the country, across the country in 2023, because of the increase in the cost of production, then imagine what will happen in 2024. So this is where government comes in.
government needs to begin to subsidize, as in really subsidize major farm inputs for local farmers. So, for example, seeds, okay, across all states, make available seeds, especially available farm inputs, make available stock funding. Okay, yesterday I read that CBN met with the Bank of Agriculture on how they begin to, look at how they could easily access funding for smaller farmers. All those things are very important. Yeah. So if you could harness all these things together, then definitely we should have future for the next farming season. So hopefully 2024 should be better if and only if our federal government, local government, give reason and believe that farming is the only in the economy that can help reduce the level of unemployment. And even now that food is very expensive.
All right, Aki Alavi, author, co-founder, and managing partner, Corporate Farmers Nigeria. We appreciate your time on the show this morning. Do have a great day ahead, sir.
Thank you.
All right, now that okay, that's the package of today's business now. Today, Wednesday, the 13th of December. I am Aramide Florenshaw. We thank you for listening. It's bye for now.
This is 95.3 Business Now.